Okay. Oh my God, this is going to be a problem, I'm guessing. Is that
Hi.
tone still audible for everybody? Hey, hi, Sachin.
Hi.
Are you
Yes, loud
guys
and clear.
also able to hear people joining in, or is it just on my end?
No,
We're
we can
able to
hear
hear
people
people joining
joining
in.
in.
Okay,
You're
everybody's able to hear. Okay.
And it's popping up as
Just,
well.
yes, yes. Just give me a second. I'm trying to figure it out because Teams is a new platform for us. We usually do it on Zoom.
Ah,
Just allow me a
Yeah, I was
minute.
surprised to see Teams today. I said maybe some new changes
Yes,
keeps on coming.
of course. Whatever our speaker feels comfortable with, we always support with that. So, no problem. Today we'll have to just adjust with a small little notification sound, but I hope it does not bother a lot. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Coach to Transformation's CCU webinar series. Today we have Julie Johnson. I'll give a quick introduction to Julie, and then I will share her the space to start her webinar for today. Okay, so Julie Johnson, a Master Certified Coach and a seasoned coach supervisor, has worked with thousands of leaders across 50 plus countries and 6 continents. Based in the Netherlands, she leads Julie Johnson Consulting, offering coaching and feedback driven framework
okay,
to
now I'm getting
clients
on a
ranging.
break. Sorry.
I'll request all of you to be on mute, please. Okay, thank you so much. As I was saying, she leads Julie Johnson Consulting, offering coaching feedback driven frameworks to clients ranging from scale ups to Fortune 500 companies. Julie specializes in elevating leadership performance and only takes on assignments that create meaningful, lasting impact. With a global network of professionals, she brings deep expertise and passion for helping people be at their best. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you so much. And I would like to start by thanking those of you that do have your video on. It gives me somebody real to talk to in a way. So it's really nice to see this hello group of people in the one room. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
You've had a long day. Hi. So
Hi.
wonderful. Okay. Gosh, I'm going to start by giving a little bit of context, and I do have a slide deck to show, but I'd like to start by sharing the story of what brings me here today. So I have freelance coached for a number of years, and back in 2014, I started up a larger company, and I was getting advice from people, and somebody whose advice I really particularly valued, I asked her, should I write a blog? Should I publish every month? I think I could write something every month. She said, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so I thought I was doing this so that I could increase visibility and stay on the radar of people in order to bring business in. And yet, what I didn't realize is that because I write about different specific aspects of coaching conversations, and what I didn't realize is the act of writing actually got me to process all these coaching conversations that I had observed, and also my own experiences coaching, and also what I'm reading to process these and to come up with themes and to crystallize these themes. And that's why I'm doing this today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this huge toolkit of powerful questions and deep listening techniques, et cetera, to share. So that's what led into it. I can encourage you, if you decide you would like to write regularly, it can really bring your thinking forward. Okay, so what I'll be sharing with you today is a combination of tools and a number of stories to support these tools. So some of the tools will sound familiar. I do have, for example, the scaling tool in a particular situation, and some of you may have heard of the scaling tool. Another thing that you're going to see is with my organization, we have the logo or the jingle, coaching is an art. So you're going to see some artwork from an international artist based here in the Netherlands. They will be Dutch scenes. And actually, my intention here is not to sell his artwork. My intention is to help you relaxed and get into a reflective mode because they're beautiful outdoor scenes. So let's see. Oh, when I'm looking to my right, by the way, I'm checking my notes to make sure I don't forget a story or something like that. I'm not checking my phone for emails. Okay, I'm going to share some standalone tools, and then later on, I'm going to share some models that are more complex. So you have that to look forward to. Okay, and now I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, you all can see that. Welcome, Powerful Questioning Techniques. The agenda today, we've had the introduction, standalone tools, several models, and Q&A. However, if a question comes up and you think it's really good to interject, please just bring the question up in the middle. Okay, this is the first tool. I've worked with a lot of senior leaders and coaches who want to make sure that they ask open questions. And you can actually tell if your question is open or closed by the very first word. So you can literally catch yourself if you find yourself starting, you want to ask open questions and you find yourself starting with have, you can say, wait a minute, you can do a self-correct in front of them. Say, wait a minute, let me phrase this differently. And then you start with one of the words on the right side of your screen. So the words on the right, in particular, juicy words for open questioning, start with how and what. And that allows the coachee to be able to choose any answer they want and not choose from a limited menu that you might give them. So when I was preparing for my MCC, I worked with a mentor coach, and that's part of the process. And she had me transcribe coaching conversations that I recorded, and then she would literally form a table and do an analysis of the percentage of my questions that were open and closed. And that was a real eye-opener. Although I knew all about this, it's still so easy to slip into the closed questions. And I'm not saying we should never ask a closed question. However, we try to keep most of our questions to open to get that deeper thinking. Okay, let's move on. So we'll look at asking the question and what asking that question might achieve. Let's go to the first standalone tool here to clarify the goal. Okay, this is the imagine question. Imagine that you achieve this goal overnight. What exactly would that look like? Okay, so let's think about somebody who would like to increase their visibility. That's a coaching theme that comes up for me all the time. So imagine that you overnight had an increased visibility to the level that you would like it to be. What would you be doing? And then they start coming up with the specifics or the definition that they have of visibility. So they might say things like, well, there's about 5 different people that I would schedule coffee with and have a conversation with, just a chat. I know exactly who they are, so I'd be doing that. Okay, what else would you be doing? Well, I'd offer to present my latest project at our next team meeting. What else would you do? Et cetera, et cetera. So you get them coming up with their definition of the goal. And sometimes our coaches, they show up really clear on the goal, and sometimes they think they're clear and they're not, and sometimes they know they're not clear. Okay, let's look at the next tool. The scaling question, which I referred to earlier, and using it here to determine the level of the coachee's commitment. So you get the goal set up on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being no way, Jose, and 10 being, I'm going to do this no matter what. Where are you now? Now, I would say if they give it an 8 or less, the chances are, even an 8, the chances are high that they're not going to do it. My apologies. So the chances are high that they're not going to do it. So this is one way to determine commitment. Here's a story example of that. I was coaching somebody who was very task focused, and he wanted everything he did, he wanted to move forward and to be able to tick off tasks. And we were talking about the value of him doing a morning walk in the office and going around and checking in with people and asking how they're doing, share about their weekend, etc. And he knew intellectually that this was a good idea. However, it wasn't a task to tick off in terms of productivity in his mind. And so he said, yeah, I've got to do that. I've got to do that in the morning. And I asked him I didn't even ask the scaling question. You know what I said? I said, you're not going to do it, are you? And he said, no, I'm not. And so when they say I've gotta, they're not motivated yet. So then coaching through on how to do it might not make sense yet. Finding the motivation could be more valuable. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. I do hear a little bit of noise somewhere.
Julie, the slide
Julie.
doesn't move forward.
There we go.
Julie, I think the participants and the audience is telling that the slides are not moving.
The slides
So-
are not moving. Oh,
So it's still to clarify the goal.
I'm not sure what to do here.
No problem. You could share it with me if you require. I will go ahead and present it for you.
Okay, so to send it to you. Is that correct?
Or you can
Sorry,
stop
everybody.
sharing and reshare it.
Yeah,
That
why
might
don't I try
also
that
work.
first? Let's do
Yeah.
that.
I think maybe Julie is facing a bit of network issue. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but
Yeah,
she looks.
we can, but the slide has just not moved from to clarify the goal. And also,
Yes.
Aishwarya, we're getting these lobby messages on our screen.
Sorry?
People waiting in the lobby, those messages are also coming on the screen.
I've actually accepted everybody. I can't see any messages coming right now.
See, there are people waiting in the lobby and I'm getting those messages, so I thought I'd just highlight it.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Vandana. We're extremely sorry. I think Teams is not our best. So just allow us some time. I think Julie has dropped off because of the network issue. She should be
We can
here
all
soon.
switch out those notifications when people log in.
Yes, there is a option. There's a small bell button. If you just click on that, it stops giving you notifications on that.
Aishwarya, I'm still getting the lobby messages.
Vandana, you'll have to turn it off. As soon as that notification comes, you can just click on it. There's a small bell button that will help you turn it off. There is no option on Teams to turn it off for all of you. I'm
All right,
extremely
all right.
sorry.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm getting it. I'll look into it. Thank you.
We usually use Zoom, right? And we have never faced this.
Yeah, agreed.
So please
That's much better.
excuse us for this time. Yeah.
No worries at all.
I'll just quickly go ahead and check on Julie. Not sure. Meanwhile, all of you can go ahead and drop in your questions so that when it's time, I'll bring her in for question and answer as well. Q&A session as well. Yes, Abhik, we'll be sharing once we receive it from her, from Julie. Mm. Hello, everybody. I just spoke to I think there has been an issue with Teams. So her computer completely shut and she's trying to restart. She'll be here another 2, 3 minutes. I'd really appreciate all of you for your patience. Thank you so much.
That is the strangest thing
Hey.
Wow, I've never had that. Everything blocked and beach balled. I'm sorry, everybody. Suddenly everything froze. But there was
No
something
problem.
wrong from the beginning with the slideshow. So let's see if I can get the slideshow to show now. And
Sure.
thank you for your patience, everyone, and for hanging in there. Okay. Can people see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's a thumbs up. I like thumbs up. Okay, I will quickly go through the first few slides just so you can see them. So this is the first word slide. This is the imagine slide, if you achieved it overnight. This is the scaling slide. And this is a new one now. So sometimes, for example, a number of years ago, I was coaching somebody who was working at a bank and they had to do a lot of downsizing. They had a big transformation and he was going to be let go and he was trying to decide what his next career step would be. So he thought, maybe I can start up a company and be a project manager consultant. And so we talked about it a bit, and it was obvious that neither one of us had enough information for him to be able to make that decision. So instead of looking for the information by asking open questions, my question was, what information do you still need to decide? And he was clear on that. I need to know about this and that and the other thing. And I said, well, where can you get each piece of information? And so he, in front of me, was making a plan to go do his research. So he made that plan. He went out, did his research, came back, and the decision was clear. So sometimes when you know it's not in the room, ask them what they can do to find out what they need. Okay, let's go to a next question. So to look at some things that already work. Sometimes some of the things that they're doing are already partially effective. So are there times that you're closer to this goal than other times? Tell me about these. So, for example, I was working with somebody who wanted to become a better presenter. And I asked this question. And he said, well, I do a better job when I prepare really well. Okay, so that's clear. Preparing well, making sure that you have the time to do that and not winging it probably is going to be helpful. Okay, then I asked, what else? Well, I do a better job when it's not the first time that I've met the audience. And so that would suggest that when possible, that he could meet at least a few members of the audience beforehand. So it could be before the day of the presentation. That would be nice networking as well. Or he could, and I think should, show up as early as he can, get the equipment set up, and then meet people and have a little bit of a chat with them before he starts to present. And so he's actually literally met them, and that he found very helpful. And that was an easy one to do. Okay, let's go to the next one. So now we're looking at whether or not they're motivated. So this question here, how would you achieve this? How would achieving this goal affect your work, your career, your life? Okay, so we could try to convince them, you know what, you should become a better presenter because then it would enhance your career. You might get noticed for promotion opportunities. And then you as coach are working really hard to talk them into doing this. And instead get them to talk themselves into doing this. So for example, how would it achieve your work life? Well, let's see, if I was a better presenter, I would be able to convince more stakeholders of the projects that I propose. That would be great. Okay, how else would it affect your career? Well, if I was a better presenter, I would present more because right now I stay away from it. And if I presented more, I'd get more visibility. And if I had more visibility, I would be noticed and considered for next positions sooner. Okay, and then I ask it again, and he comes up with, so then you get a really robust list of pieces of motivation that he has come up with that, you know, by the end of this, they often say, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Okay, here's the flip side of the coin. You could ask it this way. What's the cost of you not doing this? Well, if I don't get better at presenting, kind of the negation of that, I wouldn't present as much, or I'd present and look, you know, kind of sloppy and not be taken seriously. I probably would not get promoted into a leadership position, and I'm really wanting to do that. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. So they talk themselves into mustering up the courage to do it. Okay, to stimulate new thought. Now, this is, you might think this is a stupid question. When my children were teenagers, if I would share this question with them, they would say, duh. So here goes. What have you or what have we not thought of yet? It's like, duh, if we haven't thought of it, of course we haven't said it. However, when we ask this question, people feel socially obligated to try to answer the question. And so they actually get their mind to go out of the box and to come up with things that they haven't thought of. It's gorgeous. And when you ask this question, you're probably going to get a lot of silence afterwards because they are very busy trying to answer the question authentically. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, this is the what else technique. And I know some of you have heard about this, learned about this, and I'd like to emphasize a few things here. You can use it all over the place. Like you could use it like, what could have caused this issue? And then they give you an answer and you say, what else, what else, what else, what else? Okay, or let's brainstorm solutions. What could you do? And they give an idea. You ask what else, they give another idea. You ask what else, they give another idea. So you're getting them to generate this stuff. However, what is also going to happen is when you ask what else, the first probably few times, there's not going to be silence, most likely, after when you ask what else and when they give the answer, which means that the idea isn't very new. They are simply transferring information that they already have to you. So if you continue asking what else, you'll start to notice silence. And the more you ask it, the longer the silence. And depending on your cultural background and all sorts of stuff, some people are very comfortable with silence and other people are not comfortable with silence. And if you're not, to bite your tongue and to find ways to be quiet because you've got them very busy. You've created this gorgeous situation where they are thinking really hard. And if you ruin it by filling the silence because you're uncomfortable with the silence, that's really a shame. So I would recommend asking what else until they have no more answers. Those last ideas are going to be the newest and sometimes the best. Okay, I saw a heart. That was nice. Okay, let's look at the next one here. This is not a question officially, so it's not allowed, but I'll put it in anyway. Somebody shares, they give you the tip of the iceberg. They give you a piece of bait. I had one guy say once we were talking about a topic, and then he kind of switched the subject and just threw this in and then pulled back again. He said, yeah, and it's not going so well at home either. And I thought, what? Whoa, wait a minute. And so I didn't say, tell me more. I said, do you want to tell me more? So in socially, when we have conversations with people and they share things or we share something, if the other person says, oh, tell me more about that. How did that happen? Or how did that go? That insinuates that you probably really are interested instead of just nodding and listening to their short story and hoping that they're done pretty soon. So tell me more can get them to reconsider, ooh, I'm not sure if I wanted to share this next thing, but yeah, maybe I will, because I've actually been invited to do so. Okay, so to find the question. So when you ask a question of your coachee and your coachee says, oh, good question, ding, 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 light bulb goes on. This is a good question. They've acknowledged it. You know what happens? Oftentimes they won't try to answer it because it's a good question and it's a hard question. So you propose, should we stay with this for a while? Well, why don't we consider this? What do you think? And you get them to stay with that good question, but also know that it can be a kudo for you when you get that comment, good question, that you're probably doing things that they find valuable. Okay, so here's another one that's related. So your coachee says, you're talking about it, you're trying to figure out the goal, and the coachee says, you know what, the real question here is, and then they create their own question. It's gorgeous. You're not even asking the questions anymore. You've got them pinning it down and narrowing it down. It's great. So when they do that, they often make it rhetorical. Yeah, the real question is da 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 da, and then they move on to something else. They say, wait a minute. Let's take a look at this real question then. What do you think? And bring them back to this real and difficult question. I was coaching a guy. Yes. Oh, I thought I heard something. I was coaching a guy recently, and It was amazing. We would have the coaching session. I'd ask a question and then he'd give an answer. And then he'd ask himself the next question and then he'd answer his question. Then he'd ask himself another question and he'd answer it. So he was coaching himself right in front of me. And I thought, Julie, shut up. Do not say anything. This is going really well. Just watch with awe. And I gave him feedback on that afterwards. And that, what a wonderful skill to have such self-reflection, that you can ask your own questions and you can give answers to your own questions. So we can also capture nonverbal clues. So for example, somebody says something of, you might call their cards, not on everything they do, of course, but wow, that's a deep sigh. And then they might say, yeah, this is really bothering me because, and then they give you information they might not have given you otherwise. Or you might say, I noticed that you just started talking really quickly when we shifted to talking about your boss. Or I noticed you're raising your voice here. But what could that be about? And get them to help you understand that change in behavior. Okay. To help them get unstuck. So what if they have a limiting or false assumption here? We can challenge it. These are some ways that we can challenge it. What if that wasn't true? What if you're wrong? Or even I'm not convinced. Or I might say, convince me. I'm just not there yet. Okay, here's a story, a true story. Years ago, I was coaching a senior HR leader on a number of things. And he said at a certain point, I don't have very good intuition with people. And I said, oh, what makes you think that? And he said, well, my wife tells me. So I thought, okay. So I just kind of tucked that in the back of my mind. And then we had several sessions and he had shared, I think, 3 stories of when he had different stories, different people. He had intuition and he had acted upon it and it ended up going very well. So like at maybe our 4th session, I said, there's something I've been noticing that you shared with me that I'd like to check with you. Are you okay with that? He said, yeah. So I said, you shared these 3 stories and I paraphrased them. And yet you've said that you don't have very good intuition. What if you actually have really good intuition and that this is a blind spot on the positive side? He just about, literally, we were physically in the same room. He just about fell off his chair. So we talked about that and we agreed that he would go out and consciously not tuck his intuition out of sight, but get it out there and make use of it and then notice what happens. He did that. He came back a changed man. He had discovered a huge strength that he wasn't aware he had. It was beautiful. Okay, next one. Okay, to get permission to offer feedback on something you've noticed that seems to connect to the theme being discussed, and I do have a story behind this. Okay, so years ago, I was working as a coach with an organization, a sports organization, where they were doing a 360 process with a number of people, and each person could only get their 360 report. So 360 where other people give comments about their perceptions of that person. So very interesting, juicy stuff. They could only get their report if they spent 2 hours with the coach. And I was one of the coaches. So there was this one time I met the person, we shook hands, and he looked at me with an expression on his face that I interpreted as, oh, help. Do I have to spend 2 hours with the old lady to get my report? So anyways, I felt this tingle going up and down my spine. And then I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. Because I deeply believed in the process and that he would find it valuable, but that was a rough start. So we sat down, we started going through the report, and by about a half an hour, he's like a puppy dog. He's getting a lot of value out of it. So completely 180 change here. And then we got to a piece of information on that report where it said that he was seen as judging people as not worthy until they prove themselves and their work worthy. So it's almost like guilty until proven innocent. So I was making a connection between that and what happened when I first saw him. And I said, you know what? There's something that happened when we first met that I think might be connected. Would you like me to share it? I said, sure. And so I shared with him what happened. We shook hands, the look on his face, my interpretation of the look. And I said, look, it's not about me. I can handle that and much more. But if you are doing that with your colleagues, many of them are going to go with the Pygmalion effect and they will perform less well because they aren't believed in. And that ended up being the most valuable part of the entire session for him. Big new discovery. So the deeper thing here is that we use ourselves as a tool in service of the coachee. So I was using myself and how I experienced that first moment in service of him learning something that can make him a better leader. Okay. So to give the coachee space to think, to ask questions of oneself, etc. This is going to be a no-brainer, but I'm so into silence. There's so much around silence. So here are a couple of tricks around silence. So I'm sure you all are already asking some killer questions. So you ask this, if you ask a question, you get an answer right away. It's probably not new thought. If you ask a question and you get silence, you're probably triggering some deeper thought and they need time to think. Now, if your coachee is uncomfortable with silence, they might have the tendency or the desire to start filling the silence with small talk to give them time to think. So here's one thing that I do. I ask the question, there's a pause. I say, take your time. So that already kind of relaxes the situation. Okay, here's another one related. I say, take your time. I'm going to take a few notes. And then I turn away. I don't know if any of you can see me right now, but I turn to the side and I take notes or pretend to take notes, draw daisies, just to get me out of their face so I'm not like staring at them, waiting for them to hurry up and start talking kind of impression. So that's what I do. Another one, when you expect like to be a big, long silence, if they really want to think hard about it, it's a tough question. You ask the question, there's silence, and then you say, do you mind while you're thinking about this, I'd just like to get a glass of water. And they're almost like thrilled. It's really interesting. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And so then I walk away, I get my glass of water, I come back, and by that time, they've really had the space and the freedom to process. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is where I'm getting into some of the models here. So I've worked with hundreds of leaders on how to develop a coaching leadership style. And here's the trap that you get up front. Oh, sorry. So the coachee says, what do you think I should do? Or what would you do if you were me? Okay, for me, that's like a red light bulb. I had that happen years ago. I was coaching somebody and I coached her for quite a while, and she wasn't the type to ask for advice. But then one day she came with this dilemma. She said, I've got two things I can do. I can do A or B. If I do A, it will be against my values, but it will increase my chances of getting this job that I really want. Okay, if I do B, it will support my values, but my chances of getting the job would be lesser. And then she said, what would you do if you were me? And I confess, I had started thinking about what I would do if I were her. And I long paused and I knew that I had to be really careful here. And I said, you know what? I don't think you even want to know what I would do if I were you, because you've got to live with your decision. I don't. And there was another long pause. So it's like she had thrown the responsibility for the answer into my lap. I threw it back to her. And she said, all right, I'm going to stick true to my values. I'm going to lower the chances of getting the job, but I want to sleep at night. So that was a beautiful moment. Okay, so here's the tool for those of us who are coaching and those of us who are leading. The 3-step solution, with the 3rd step being optional. Step 1. So they ask you, what do you think I should do? You throw it back, you boomerang it back to them. You say, well, I'd like to hear your thoughts first. What do you think? Okay, so then you turn their brain back on. And then step 2, you ask, all right, let's brainstorm here. What else could you do? What else could you do with different wording, of course, on and on. Silence gets longer and longer until they have no more ideas. And you probably will get a really robust set of ideas. It's usually happens. And then optional third step, if you are okay with stepping out of the coaching circle, you know, I have a few more ideas. Would you be interested? Okay, so this is different. This is a model that I've also developed called the coaching walls. In watching hundreds of conversations, I notice a pattern that repeats itself often, especially in a good high quality coaching conversation. So the first of 3 steps. So there's Q&A, Q&A, Q&A about a certain topic. And then there's kind of a silence, or it feels like you're just wrapping it up maybe. So you ask, have we covered that? Are we done? And they might say, yeah. Or they might say, no, one more thing. And then they add the one more thing, and then you check with them again. Is that it now? Okay. And then the 2 of you agree, and this is called contracting in coaching language. The 2 of you contract or agree, yep, done with that topic, finished, thank you very much. Okay, then step 2 is that somebody summarizes their understanding of that piece of the conversation that you just finished. So the coach or the coachee. So the coach could say, how about if I summarize to make sure that I understand correctly? And then you summarize, especially if it was messy and you're not sure you did understand. That can be really helpful. Or how about if you summarized your understanding of what we just talked about? And then you can get an idea of what they did understand and what is important to them. Oh, I've got a good story behind this one too. Okay, just a moment. I'll tell you that at the end. Okay, and then you 2 agree on the summary. And if you get it wrong, that's great. You're nipping it in the bud. So there's a misunderstanding that gets eliminated right away, which is wonderful. Step 3, and this is like moving forward now. You might say, shall we talk about such and such? Or maybe better language could be, would you like to turn our attention to such and such? So you propose something, or you could propose, would you like to do this, that, or this? Or you could put it completely in their lap and you could say, so where would you like to go from here? What would you like to do now? So either you propose or you ask them to propose. And then there's agreement. Okay, a little bit that's kind of related to this model, not entirely overlap, but I think it's a story worth telling. So I was coaching a really senior procurement guy years ago, and it took me longer than usual to gain his trust. We were like 3 sessions in, and I still felt like we were creating the safe environment that I usually felt could be created earlier. So I'm coaching him, and we had a session, and I felt like we got a lot done, and I was taking good notes. Thank goodness. So I thought we covered some really important topics. So at the end, I said, well, how, because he was looking kind of like shrugging his shoulders. I said, how about if you summarize what you're taking away from this? And he gave this little short summary and mentioned like 1 or 2 items out of the maybe 6 or 7 that I had noted. And so I thought, uh-oh, I'm not coming back. You know, you have one bad session with these very senior people, it can often be over. So I tried to look relaxed, and I said, well, would you like me to check my notes to see if there might be anything else that we found important at the time? He goes, yeah, go ahead. And he leans back with his arms crossed, and you know how some people will put like their ankle on top of the other knee, so looking really taking space, shall we say. So I started going through my notes. He grabs a pen and a piece of paper and starts furiously taking notes because he had forgotten this. He had valued it, but he had forgotten it. Then when I finished with that, he got up and said, let's go to my computer right now. Let's schedule that next session. So that was really valuable learning for me in terms of the summary, and the summarizing is important, whoever does it. All right, let's see where I'm at here. A little bit of tea. I'll do a really short one because I want to have enough time for Q&A here. Okay, this is going to be a very short. Those of you that are familiar with transactional analysis, forgive me for being overly brief on this one, but it's a psychological set of theories where people tend to put themselves into different positions in relationship to another person. So if you have two people talking to each other, one person might put themselves at a higher, wiser, more senior level, and the other person might put themselves at a lower level, okay, like a child level. And this happens with or without formal hierarchy all the time. Think of your relationships and how that goes, even with peer colleagues, for example. So this can be encouraged by the coachee. So the coachee says, please tell me what to do, which we just looked at. So you as the coach they're trying to put you into the parent role and they're putting themselves into the child role. You can respond with an adult answer. Well, what might you do? So you throw it back to them in full respect. And with that note, I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. And I'm going to wait to hear questions from Aishwarya, if you find any in the chat.
Yes, of course. There are a lot of questions. Actually, I wouldn't
Oh,
say
great.
questions though.
Or
Just a
comments, yeah.
second. Yeah, comments. Majorly comments. Okay.
Take your time.
So Yatish is asking, Julie, I'm curious. You have included why as a questions as something recommended.
You caught me. Yes. I de-emphasized why there, but yes, why is a really dangerous question because it can be seen as condescending and judgmental. So if we ask something like, why would you do that? Or why did you do that? It's like, you stupid idiot. Why in heaven's name? It's can be coming over like that. If it's a question like, why might he have answered you in that way? What do you think? That can be really different, and it's not a judgmental about why you. So we have to be really careful with the why question. I'm not against it, but I don't use it that often. If I want to ask, why did you do it that way? I might ask it this way: what brought you to decide to do it that way? What brought you to? That's a really nice way to replace the why word. Thanks for that question.
Great. Marine is asking, it sometimes happens if not saved to the computer. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's not a question.
That's all right. Take your time. And notice I'm using my take your time thing here. It happens to me all the time. So you are scanning, is that right, Aishwarya?
Yes. There are a lot of.
Okay, good. Then I know what's going on. I can also, if there are questions, I have.
I will invite people to please unmute yourselves because I think there are a lot of messages and I don't want to miss any. So Aparna is saying, is it okay to mention this? Is there a risk of coming across as the coach being judgmental? Aparna, can you share a little context for which slide maybe this
Yes,
is about?
Hi, Julie.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, fantastic. Thank you for the session. My question actually was referring to the example you shared around the expression on the coachee's face. And then you said, can I share something with you because of the 360 example, where you said that one of the things coming up in the report was, how others perceive the individual. And then at the end of which, I think you shared the example of, can I also share something with you? And, doing this with me is all right. But if you have this expression of with others, they might think you're really judgmental and it might be difficult to work with you. So I was just wondering that in that specific case, as a coach, can we come across also as being slightly judgmental or something like that? Do we run the risk of that?
Yeah, absolutely. If I said, can I share this with you? I misspoke. Thank you for catching that. I don't know what I said, actually, this was like 10 years ago, but what I should have said, and maybe did and probably didn't, is, would you like me to share it with you? And not, can I? Because then it's my agenda and I want to cram it down your throat and I'm just trying to get permission. But if it's, would you like me to share it with you? Then it's about you and what you want. So that's one thing. And
Okay.
I'm not sure
Okay.
how,
Super.
is that it? Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Actually?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for catching that, because that's really important. I've written about it, but I sometimes still slip.
Sure. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Aparna. Ryan is asking, would it be easier to use transactional analysis after explaining the model to them?
I usually don't. I usually don't share the model, but I do talk about deference sometimes when they defer to me as the coach. Oh, the holy coach, and what would you like to do? They're asking me as their coach what I'd like to do today, and I'm throwing it back to them. And so I noticed that there's a bit of deference. I'll do whatever you think we should because you know better, possibly going on. And so I do explain what I'm doing in the contract. I say, what you're going to find me doing is putting the agenda back in your lap over and over and over again. I'll either offer ideas and ask you what you want, or I'll ask you to come up with ideas about what to do. So I'll explain that to them. And sometimes I'll point it out when I'm actually doing it as well. Notice I'm asking you right now what you'd like to do, because I'm giving this back to you. So they kind of get it after a while, and they start taking the bull by the horns and suggesting things to do instead of waiting for their coach to tell them. So that's how I approach it. I don't go into the model myself.
Ryan, I hope that answered your question. Melissa is asking, can you say a bit more on transactional analysis and how you use? Thanks.
Yes, and just Julie, to play off of my question, this is Melissa. Do you speak to the power of the dynamic, and that, I'm handing you the power of this, or do you talk about co-created power, or how do you speak about, those three roles and what it's like? Is it in the relationship with the coachee, or is it in they share a conversation with their boss or their peer or their husband or wife or something like this? I'd be curious just to have a couple examples on how you might use it, like a question or something like that.
Well, how about if you share an example for us? I think that'd be really interesting. Would you be willing to share an example? Or are you asking me for examples? Oh, I thought you said you did.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
I would be curious. I haven't studied TA. I've studied a lot of other psychological models, but I haven't studied TA. I find it to be a lot bigger in India. I haven't studied it yet, but just curious about how you might use it in a, I do a lot of like parts work or certain other psychological things, and I might ask a certain question, but I was curious like how you might say a TA type question to one of your coachees.
Yeah. Without, in my case, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do or the best thing to do. It works for me. Without mentioning the model per se, I might point out that I'm contracting with them. I might point out that you're asking me what I would like to do, but I'd like to throw that back to you. Because remember, this is your session. So I talk about what's happening in the moment more, and that seems to resonate. And after I explain this contracting thing, sometimes when I'm having a chemistry session before I've got the work in, I'll explain what it might be like to work with me, and I'll explain the contracting concept, and that it will be up to them to make the decision as to what we do together. And then when I'm actually doing it with them, I'll say, notice I'm contracting right now. What would you like to do? And then we have a laugh, and then they take it on their shoulders again. So that's kind of nice I'm doing that more and more. I'm not sure why, but it seems to be helpful. I explain sometimes what I'm doing in the coachings. I know what I'm doing. I'm using a technique, but sometimes I'll explain that technique, and they find it very interesting often.
Mm.
And I think it kind of helps promote increased transparency as well, instead of me doing my little bag of tricks behind the scenes.
I can see
Yeah.
that. Thank you so much. Yeah, that helps. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Melissa, we did have a webinar with Julie Hay on transactional analysis. I have just shared it in our chat box. You can maybe check that out.
Ooh,
Just
wonderful.
got reminded of it, so I thought maybe I could share it here.
Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. I hope I can move to the next question. Okay. How do we develop our skill in determining which tool or model to use for which type of situation?
Yeah. So when you ask that question, my thoughts go to when people are first learning how to coach, they think, okay, I've got to come up with the next brilliant question. And they're maybe not fully listening to what the person is saying right in front of them, but they're thinking, okay, where can I take this? That's really brilliant, a great question. And so what we need to be doing is fully, like no question planning, listening to what they're saying, and that the next question comes out of what they're saying right now. So we build on what they're saying instead of like having, okay, now I'm going to shift it here because that would be a really smart thing to do. No, the question is coming out of their mouth. Not the question itself, but the inspiration for the next question is, so you dig deeper, for example, you notice that their face flinches when they say something, you might bring that up, and that's happening right in front of you in the moment. So it's like a really be alert and in the moment and trust yourself. There are a zillion directions you can go at any point in a coaching conversation. There are a zillion, and we choose one of them, each of us. And there's so many good ones. So we need to listen to ourselves. Do we have time for one more?
Yes. How does your questioning strategy adapt from the early stages of contracting to the closing phase while still honoring the client's agenda and growth?
If I understand the question correctly, there's several buckets of contracting. There's the contracting upfront. And I imagine in the courses that you're taking or have taken or are going to take, that you'll go through that, how are we going to meet virtual face-to-face, how often, how long, how do we make appointments, that kind of stuff. So there's all of that set up, and probably some other things about working together too, like I'd like you to really challenge me a lot. I'd like you to give me feedback if they say things like that. That could be part of the upfront contracting as well. And then there's the contracting in the moment. So that coaching waltz model is an example of that. You're talking about something, you think you're done, but you're not going to cram the next subject down their throat without checking with them. You can say, have we covered that? Is there anything else in this topic? Would you like to move on? What would you like to do now? So any shift in the conversation, consider contracting. You keep putting them in control. So those are the two buckets for contracting that I think are super important. I guess I can mention one other thing. When I first started coaching, it was so interesting. I could just stay there for hours and it was so easy to run over, and I'm helping people so much and all that, but you've got to end on time. And so in order to manage time, one of the things I'll do sometimes, especially if I get a feeling that it could run over, is, well, we've got about 5 minutes left. How would you like to use that time? So then they're like, oh yeah. Or I'm cognizant of time. We have 10 more minutes, and it looks like the list that we came up with today probably needs more time. How should we organize this? What would you like to do now, and what would you like to do next time? Things like that. So the closing of the conversation, that's really helpful too. And that can help like in meetings and everything, not just coaching conversations.
Great. It's 7 p.m. Julie, if you would like us to close the session, we'll go ahead. But I see a few hands raised here. So it's up to you if you want
I'm
to take
happy
the
to
question.
stay. I'm happy to stay for whoever wants to stay, sure. So
Okay.
wonderful questions.
Vidhi,
And
would you like
those
to
of
go?
you leaving, thank you very much. Okay, why don't we do that next question? If you have one now.
Yes, Vidhi, you can go ahead and take the question.
Thanks,
I mean,
Aishwarya. Hi,
ask her a
Julie.
question.
Firstly, thank you for a
Hi.
very insightful presentation. My question revolves around a roadblock I often see with some of my clients when I ask them questions as to what and how or what are their options. A lot of times, clients say, I don't know.
Mhm.
And often I feel like that kind of
Yeah.
creates a roadblock. How would you recommend navigating around or through repeated I don't knows from clients?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, so how can you find out? It's not on our shoulders to answer if they can't answer, per se.
Mm.
And like that one story where we didn't know if he should start that new business up or not.
Right.
It wasn't in the room. I said, how can you find out? What information do you need? Where can you get it? Those kinds of questions can help get them working. And you know what happened? He came back and he decided to start the business. He had the information he needed and he's been very successful.
That's very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ankur, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Aishwarya. Julie, it was an amazing session that is there. I'm
Oh,
quite
thank
new
you.
to coaching at this point in time, so everything was pearl for me. So I was trying to write down and take care of everything. Very basic question at this point could be: so we get into a conversation, we set up a goal that we may be able to achieve in this session. We start getting into an agreement. The agreement gets into some type of awareness. Again, you go back to agreement. It goes as a circle that comes in. How do you navigate this? And also, you talked about there could be zillion directions that could be there. How do we know that's the right direction to go in this case?
I'm not sure I'm getting the question. Part of it is that you're blurred and I read lips quite a bit.
Oh, I'm
Can
sorry
you
for
say it
that.
maybe like in, that's okay. Can you say it maybe in one sentence and say it kind of slow? I have bad hearing and so I struggle with that.
Okay. So in a session, we start with a goal. We may ask the client, what
Yes,
would you like to discuss today?
thank you.
Then we start going in the agreement phase. From the agreement, we start going to some type of awareness coming across. But again, they go back to an agreement because we haven't been able to complete the entire thought process at that point in time. Has this happened? Have you faced such type of a thing that comes across where the agreement and the awareness keeps on going in a circular manner?
Yes, well, as you say that, it makes me think of one scenario that I've seen happen many, many times, and I'm sure you have too, because it happens in normal conversations too. So up front, you agree on the goal. This is what we're going to focus on and achieve today. Okay, then they start dumping. Suddenly I have somebody who's really listening to me and they go all over the place and they go left and they go right. So they get off task. So something that you can do is you can, and sometimes I'll do this with my hands because that gets their visual attention. So can we do a timeout? I noticed that you're taking the conversation in this direction, and I'm wondering if you'd like to do that instead, or would you like to go back to what we agreed on? So that's one thing you can say. So another thing you could say if they're going off here, for example, say, can we do a timeout? Can you help me understand how this story connects to the goal that we set today? And this can get it back on track, especially if they're very verbose, long-winded, and you're starting to panic. You think, oh, we're not going to achieve what I promised we would, and that can help you. And you have to interrupt. And so women are more often taught not to interrupt. And so female coaches can sometimes struggle more with this. So the timeout sign, can we do a timeout here? You got to interrupt sometimes because some people don't speak with any spaces. So yeah, I hope that partially answers your question anyway.
Yes, it does. Just a follow-up to that. You mentioned there could be zillion directions where the conversation can go.
Say it again, sorry. I said?
You mentioned there could be zillion directions where
Yes.
the conversation can go. Now,
Yes.
when they are doing this circular motion of agreement to awareness and agreement to awareness, it could be one of the zillion directions. How do we figure out which one is the right one to go?
There isn't a right one in my mind. Typically, there are several to many really good directions we can go, and that's where coaching is so human. And we might, I've seen demos where you have a circle of very experienced coaches sitting literally in a circle and two people in the center, and one is coaching the other in the middle of the circle. And then there's a debrief on how that coaching session went. And I tell you, there are as many ideas as there are coaches observing about where they would have taken the conversation. So we need to trust our heart and be in service of the coachee, and also check with the coachee. Would it be useful? Shall we do this? Kind of thing. So, and that can help you narrow it down, because if they say, yeah, I've had this. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do this other thing instead. Fantastic. So that's where the contracting can really help you make a better choice.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Julie.
Yeah. Thank you. You're muted, Aishwarya.
Thank you so much, Julie. I did not realize.
Problem.
I was saying that the others who have their hand raised, please do share the questions with us. We will surely share it with Julie and try and get those answers for you guys. But it's 7:07, and I would like us to end the session by thanking Julie for today's wonderful webinar. Thank you so much, Julie. I think
thank you.
I was just going through a few feedback that we have received, and all of them were only about Zoom being used and how wonderful you are. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody else who has joined today. I have shared a CCU certificate form. For the ones who are already credentialed, it's very useful for you guys. So please do fill the form and get your one CCE unit for today's webinar. And I will see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Super. I'll stay on for a bit, Aishwarya.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now the little windows are getting bigger now. Again.
Yes. Now you'll be able to see me completely in the end.
Indeed. And sometimes people step away from their computer and then they come back. Oh, see.
Hello, everybody else. You guys can log off. The webinar has ended.
Thanks, everybody.